What's up? So, I said earlier that I was gonna do a review of the Nina Simone documentary. Someone actually asked me on Tumblr my thoughts on it, and I actually hadn't seen it. So, this morning when I woke up, I was like, "Babe, let's watch this." And at first we were gonna watch Prince of Egypt. I'm not gonna lie to you. But then I was like, "Fuck that." I was like, I could watch Prince of Egypt anytime. Not saying that Prince of Egypt isn't a good film, but I was kind of just like, let's get into this Nina Simone, because I feel like I just need to watch this. I was seeing some gifs, sets popping up, and I was kind of just like, why am I not watching this? Like what is wrong with me? And the thing is, I never really listened to Nina Simone that much. I want to say that when I lived more so with my roommate Jody, they're a very big fan of Nina Simone. So there's a lot of music that they played from Nina Simone that I jammed to, but I would say the only song I really knew was Nina Simone's cover of I Put a Spell on You, and I was feeling it so hard, and so I was like, where, Nina Simone, yes. And then, obviously, as most people know, when Zoe Saldana was supposed to be playing Nina Simone in a biopic and was super doing blackface, and folks were kind of like, why are y'all mad? Like, folks were just really not understanding. And I will say this, even not knowing so much about Nina Simone and her political activist legacy, I would have to say that, like, blatantly blackface is fucked up, obviously. Like, that's base level. But I think after watching this documentary, it's just, like, so much more fucked up seeming. Or rather, is more fucked up now upon having more information. And obviously, at any point, I could have Googled, I could have read. I did not. But, after watching this documentary, I want to say that I gathered like a bunch of new understanding from my own perspective as well, in terms of like what it means to stand up, what it means to be outspoken, what it means to be visible in your blackness and in your liberation, like in the ways that you want to live, like the ways that you kind of push back and you resistance. So anyways, me and Sydney watched the documentary this morning, and when it started off, I want to say it started off kind of slow, talking about her early life, and, you know, I think, like, when I watch things, I'm kind of always clocking shit, like, just constantly trying to define things to my understanding, and sometimes I can be wrong, obviously. There are times where I am wrong. It's not even like sometimes. I'm wrong at times. So when I'm watching it, I immediately had the red flag when I saw that there were two older white women like mentoring her in her honing her skills of classical piano. And I just wondered what that dynamic was like, being, you know, a young black child from the South and having to walk, you know, along segregation lines just to get to a white person, and noting the difference between the white person that's helping you and not the white people that are killing folks. Like, having this real cognitive dissonance to where you're like, that is a good white person, and defining the ways that they're good, largely by using white femininity and white womanhood. And I thought that was really interesting, that during segregation, during Jim Crow, during all of the lynchings of black men and the intimidation tactics against black people, it's just like one of those things where it's like the devil don't always look like the devil, you feel me? It's like the evil and the negativity, it don't always come, you know, a blaze of glory, swinging, carrying a knife or a gun. It's not always like that. So it just kind of made me think about her relationships to whiteness in the middle of some real shit, you know, and just having white folks use their privilege in ways to accompany you. You know, they was taking coins, you know, from her little her recitals, because it's like you only got to spend a year and a half in Juilliard and then you was broke. And that says so much about the scaffolding. It's like those white ladies was not really there to make sure that you was okay. They were probably getting the kickback of putting so much energy into you, but you were already a genius. They were just adding a little bit of extra whatever the fuck to her genius. And I think in ways it just made me angry to hear her talk about, you know, obviously being gifted, obviously having access but then poverty, capitalism, being a part of her journey and being a part of why she wasn't able to be certain places that she felt like she was supposed to be. Not to mention her articulating that it took her 6 months to recognize that she was brilliant and that she had been blocked due to racism. That's also very profound. And the way that she explains understanding racism after the fact, the way that it shocks you, the way that it kind of is unsettling when you're actually understanding it for the first time, and kind of going through play-by-plays of how you reacted, and, you know, in ways shaming yourself for perhaps like your past interpretation of the situation. But that whole shit about, you know, them not having no money and them having to just work in bars to support their family who had flown all the way to Philadelphia to be closer to them, that was also something I thought that was really interesting, where like she was just playing music and they eventually were like, listen, like you need to be singing, like you need to not just be, you know, playing these keys. You know, she's out here accomplished as fuck playing all the jams, but they really were, you know, exploiting her need to work, her need to make money. You know, what do you say when someone's like, sing? And the thing is, she's obviously talented, has a very gifted voice, but it's like, damn, you know, capitalism again. It's like, how, like, if she didn't need to work, if she didn't need to exploit her talents, who knows what else, who knows what she would have been able to come to on her own without being forced to do something. And then later in life, by the end of the documentary, you learn that she hated the piano, that she hated, you know, performing, that wasn't her path anymore. And I think that that's really interesting, again, because, you know, obviously I want to definitely go into my review, but one of the things that stood out to me the most was the fact that she acknowledges that there are people that do what she does, that are performers, that she acknowledges that they are probably happier than she is, because she has used her platform and her voice to say something profound, to say something right, to say something just. And the backlash and the blacklisting and the lack of access that comes from outing yourself as someone who's not willing to not resist. It was just really real for me, because I feel like I've talked about this before, but I think a lot of perhaps people that would be seen as influential were not really fucking with me the more I decided to talk about my experiences with blackness, my experiences with gender, my experiences with class, but more so my experiences as a black person. I think really turned a lot of people off. And I think, like, in ways, when I was outspoken about being a person of size and being affected by fat phobia and just, you know, being extremely vigilant in reaffirming my worth, I think it was just like really interesting, like looking back, because at that point I had no real idea of blackness outside of it being part of my identity, but not not an exclusive identity. And so I think in ways, in the movie, when Nina talks about knowing that she was black, I think, you know, in ways for myself, blackness had to be taught and blackness had to be understood. Or rather, the way I saw blackness had to be unlearned. And the way that I understand blackness now had to be taught, and it had to be extremely, you know, just, I think, me recognizing the ways I was othering myself and recognizing the ways that I was holding on to past hurts and perpetuating them, and perhaps holding accountable some community that is just like that excuse me, that whole idea that some community is not accepting me or some community is othering me is largely irrelevant in terms of me identifying as black. I think it's something that a lot of mixed folks do, who are mixed with white, mixed with black, in whatever combinations of percentages or whatever. I think it's sometimes something that we don't see ourselves as black, we see ourselves as black and I think with that being said, we tend to other our experiences, at times self-exotify our experiences, and what is clearly anti-blackness, perhaps on a, not perhaps, but definitely on a different scale than someone who is more melanated than ourselves, we get caught up in this like idea that we're going through a very specific type of anti-blackness that is extremely more fucked up or more prevalent. And I feel like it's because of lack of access to privilege that folks do have by being ambiguously racial or not being defined as black upon perhaps first meeting or upon any kind of advantage that they're receiving for someone perhaps feeling more comfortable or feeling like this person's more acceptably black. So like just listening to the ways that like Nina Simone was aware of her blackness, but was not allowed, as she said, to speak about it in her home, and later went on to kind of say fuck you to her endorsements, her sponsors, and her way of life, in order to aid the civil rights movement. And for her to not be more known, for her to not be more, like for folks not to be as aware of her as I know they are not, is just a fucking crime. But I think it's also something that I think is going to change, I think, as per this documentary, because it was just so, just informative and just so real. I will say that there were a lot of white folks in this documentary, and I will say that there were some points where it was just too real, like it was just too similar to my life to where I had to just like, whoa, like take a moment. Because I think at one point, they're diagnosing her as crazy and erratic. And this is after, you know, they're revealing that she was abused by her white passing ass, light skinned ass husband. And I thought that was really interesting, that he was her manager, he was the best damn manager, but when she started really doing some shit, he wasn't really there for that. And I think it comes down to, you know, obviously people looking at their livelihoods and how it's going to affect them and shit. But I think on some real, I think just the politics of identity, just the fact that this light-skinned man was in charge of like what she was going to do, and the ways that he critiqued her behavior after outing herself as not willing to not resist, was very just like fucking gross to me. And it just made me angry because I've met so many white passing people who really be feeling like they don't want to be around black folks who are articulating the ways in which we are suffering. And it's really hurtful because a lot of the times, you know, I know for myself, being liberated is important as fuck. And as much as I think sometimes I get sad and I want to go back, or I want to not have said whatever the fuck, it was needed to be said. And I think that it's not so much shame, but so much more knowing what it looks like to lose out. Or not even lose out, what it looks like to just have less access, to go from having access to not, to going from relevant to not, to going from loved to people being afraid of you, to being feared, to being ostracized and cast out. I think that was really interesting, and I thought that there were a lot of black women that were speaking about Nina, including her daughter, and I just thought it was really interesting that like a lot of the people that she fucked with, a lot of the people in like the movement and stuff like that, like I just found that it was interesting that the only black folks that were really speaking were her abusive ass ex-husband. Like, I'm just not even sure why the fuck he was even allowed to be on the documentary. They should have just showed him flattering pictures of his ass and told the truth. It didn't really have to be him being all up in the background and having all this shine. I think like in ways like having knowledge of like someone being abused in ways perhaps can help you to deduce why they would perhaps react a certain way. But I'm more interested in talking about the ways in which white supremacy got Nina Simone fucked the fuck up, calling white folk in France and being like, please help me, and then they just giving her pills and just, you know what I mean, just in ways it just seemed very animalistic. It seemed like she went from one cage to the next cage to the next cage, and it was like only when I think she was being outspoken about politics and about blackness and about the ways in which we are kept from our identity that is real as fuck, I think that's the only time I think she really felt like the purpose of her career. And I think in ways, her at the end of her life regretting that she wasn't the first black classical musician, it's like, Nina, you're so much deeper than that, bitch. Like I get it. Like so much labor was put into your classical piano career. I get that. But you so much bigger than that. You so much bigger than that shit. Like, what's that anyways? Like, honestly, first black, whatever the fuck. You black. And you told niggas they was black too. Like, that's important. Like, I think in ways, like, that's like part of like where I'm coming from. It's kind of like, I realized that like, originally when I started YouTube, I was just like really young, really vapid, like just wanted to talk. I think it was lack of having folks to talk to about the ways that I was feeling, because I felt like there was so much oppressive pushback that there was no way for me to talk out loud and process or do any of those things. And I find that like through making videos, I've been able to kind of like access real moments in time where I was like, damn, like I get it, like I understand. And even when I don't understand, even when oppression obviously is illogical and it just, things happen to you because, whatever the fuck identity you hold, I think that shit kind of it allows so much more to kind of blossom and really pop off. And I think there have been so many people who have hit me up, and it's amazing that like other folks have been inspired by me, but it's sad because it's like, fuck, I had to learn from somebody else, and it wasn't my parent, and it wasn't my best friend. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a very personal, and it isn't a personal, intimate relationship when you're recognizing the ways that you have been sold blackness and the ways that you have been sold lies by our whole society, just blatant lies, just ways to make you spend more money and freak out more about positionality and about, just so many things. And obviously that's like on the lower end. The reality is folks is dying. Folks is losing land. Folks is losing homes. Folks is just out here on the streets trying to make it work. And I think that knowing that all that, like learning all that is not, it's a personal experience, but at the same time, it's a very isolated experience. And I think for myself, like learning shit, like it still is hard. I'm still learning shit. I'm still unlearning the ways that manifestations of oppression like are able to come out of me, are able to be perpetuated by me. And acknowledging that and also working against that, those are two different things, but they're both important as fuck. And I think just coming to this knowledge, reading as much as I have, experiencing as much as I have, being able to define as much as I have, has been very pivotal in my life in terms of who I have around me, in terms of who I let into my life, who I really can make space to love. I think that's so important. Like, I think before I was really aware of myself, I was just inviting anybody into my life. And I think like it's a documented thing. I think like part of my YouTube experience has been just inviting people into my life and not really scrutinizing enough perhaps the ways that we need to treat each other for this to work for both of us. And I'm not at that place anymore, but I think it also is real that like folks that aren't in that place, folks that are, just not really understanding like, I want to reach out to y'all so bad. I think like that's part of like my journey right now, is like trying to figure out how to reach out to people and do it in a way that like isn't perhaps as combative as it has been in the past, but in a way that's assertive and just not just, I want to be mindful of the ways people are journeying through here, But I think the documentary, the Nina Simone, it really got me like, yes. And honestly, shade to you, Maya Angelou. And I'm not even trying to come for you because I know, rest in peace. But it's like, how you gonna ask Nina Simone where she is? Like, after watching that documentary, I'm worried for my life, honestly. Because it's like fighting like, fighting for shit is one thing. Having having visibility and the access to fight some shit is a whole nother. And I think her having that access and that availability was a real for a time. She really had, you know, the agency. People was fucking with her like that. She was able to pop off. But that shit gets shut down quick, as we learn. And you know what? Her running to Africa, her leaving her daughter behind, that is some real ass shit. There's so many folks out here, so many parents out here gotta leave their kids behind because of the way this shit is going, and they're not even a political activist, you feel me? And I'm not even trying to put people who are activists on a pedestal. I'm just saying there are folks out here in their day-to-day who have to leave their children, who have to seek another path. Later in life, perhaps there's a reunification, but I myself realize that there's such a war out here. Like, babies is getting ripped out of people's arms, and it don't always look like someone popping up and just snatching your baby. It could be a long, lengthy court process, but the next thing you know, you the child growing up wherever the fuck, and your parent is just pretty much not existent. And I'm sure during that time, while they miss your ass, they're also trying to survive. So it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things going on that I think it's impossible for me to not speak on. But at the same time, there's also the reality that folks are out here trying to survive. And so in ways, it's a line. And I think Nina Simone, I think she was willing to cross that line. And I think even though she said some real shit about wishing she would have done different shit, wishing that she would have not said certain things or made certain music, you know, that's real as fuck. That's real as fuck. I said it myself. Sometimes I wish I could go back to sleep, but I really can't go back to sleep. It's like one of those things that you say where it's like rhetorical as fuck. It's like, you can't really go back to sleep. Don't we all wish we could go back in the time? You know what I mean? Don't we all wish we could just take, you know, a journey back real quick somewhere? We all do, but I think the reality is, like, once you really kind of step outside of what is acceptable to talk about, what is acceptable to critique, what is acceptable to be mad as fuck about, that's when you will see resistance, and it will come in all different flavors and sizes and different manifestations of situations. And so, I don't know, I want to say watch it. If you have Netflix, it's accessible on there. I don't see it online anywhere else. I looked all day. I'm going to check again and try to post it in the description bar below if I do find it. But please let me know your thoughts on the review. I'm hoping that tomorrow maybe Jody will, after me and Jody watch it, because we're going to watch it tomorrow, I'm hoping maybe Jody might want to do a Ustream on it. So if y'all are available and y'all want to come through, I'm thinking we could do the Ustream around 5 o'clock. You feel me? Start that shit like 5. Actually start that shit at like 5:30. But you know, 5 o'clock? I don't know. But if you're into 5 o'clock, come through. The description bar below will have the link. Thank you guys for watching, and take care.